So, we're starting, yeah? So, welcome to the sexiest Shiur and Shmooze in J-Town.
Yeah!
There's more seats over here. First of all, thank you so much to Sayan and Mr. T, commonly known as Tony Thwaite, for hosting. And I don't think we've ever had a Shiur and Shmooze like this as far as food and decor. So thank you very much. And thank you, Natan Alexander, for coming back after I missed the Limud session. So, yeah, but it's going to be different from the Limud session. You'll tell us all about it. And today's tzedakah is Ufkadima, which helps soldiers from the lower economic strata.
Yes.
So you'll tell us a little bit more about why this is close to your heart. And please turn off your cell phones and let's go.
Okay, thank you, Nadia. Thank you very much for offering your home to us. I hope you'll let us stay till the end once you're here. I feel funny that Balabait asked me now what I'm talking about. Once everyone's in his home.
No, I thought you were going to say, I hope you can let us stay for the year.
Okay, that's it. That's our 4 children. They can go around here and have a lot of fun. My name is Natan Alexander. If it matters to anyone, I am a rabbi. I have a very good friend. Her name is Danny Johnson. I don't know if any of you know Danny Johnson. She's not Jewish. She calls herself a messianic. Not a missionary, but a messianic. Yeah. So she believes in the Old Testament and that the Jewish people have it right. She also believes in Jesus. And she was in Israel. She brought 80 people, 80 of her followers to Israel, and I spent Rosh Hashanah with them. She has hundreds of thousands of followers around the world. In fact, on Facebook, because that's how you tell how many people like you, she has over 300,000 followers. She gives $3 million a year to tzedakah. Why am I telling you all this? Because to her it matters that I'm a rabbi. To Jews it doesn't matter that I'm a rabbi. To her it matters I'm a Levi. Because it means that in the temple I actually served the Jewish people. To us around here it doesn't mean much except for that I have to wash the Kohenim's hands. But anyway, I got smicha from Rav Shlomo Riskin and Rav Zalman Nechemim Goldberg a few years ago. And I've been in education literally since I was 15 and I'm now 35. Ufkadima, I forgot to say, Ufkadima is an organization that was started after Yochai Kalango, who was a mefaked killed up north. It was a very freaky, not that any death like this is freaky, but literally the soldiers were up there for a few hours. He was out on the first patrol and leading the entourage, and he got a call to turn around because it was too dangerous. And as they were about to turn around, a missile came in, a rocket came in from Lebanon and shot him and his driver. This is a very sad story, but is even more close to home because they live on our street in Yishuv Elazar. His father is a Gabbai Vashul, and we named our son after Yochai. Our youngest child is named Tzur Yochai, and that's why I decided to donate any generous tzedakah that you have given tonight to Ufkadima. The reason it's called Ufkadima is because that's what he used to tell his soldiers, especially those who are going through difficulties. You need to just Ufkadima, just jump forward and do what you need to do. In essence, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I was, as I say, involved in education from being, the normal youth director at a Chabad house, through to being the head of Jewish studies in South Africa of a Dati Leumi school. I came back to South Africa after Shlichut, and I was in charge of all of the yeshivot and midrashot for Masa. And I wouldn't say I was bored, but I needed to do something more exciting. and being in education, I saw through dealings that I had with families in South Africa, from children through to adults, and also personal issues in my own life and my wife's life, I realized that there are limited places for religious or conservative with a small c people to go to ask for guidance around sexuality. Sexuality is not spoken enough about. It is either spoken in a way of pritzut, vulgarity. If you look on the internet, you'll see it all over the place, or even certain places around the world, or it's hush-hush. And it's very difficult to find the somewhere in the middle. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm going to start with a story. My cousins and aunties and uncles grew up on Kibbutz Magan Michael. It was very much a part of my upbringing. In fact, when I would walk through Kibbutz Magan Michael with a kippah on, people would say, Abba, Mishu met? Like, did someone die? Why is the rabbi here? Right? So, although it was very different to me, Kibbutz Magan Michael is very much part of my heart. Anyway, we were in the Chadar Ochel with 100 and however many people eating dinner. And my one cousin says to me, Natan, will you go and get me a breast of chicken? You know, in a kibbutz you line up. So me, 9-year-old, I was pretty good at Hebrew. I knew what chicken was. Off. But I had one problem. I didn't know how to say breast. So I went over to my other cousin, and my mistake was I didn't put it in context. Yeah. And I said, hey Eliab, how do you say breast? And he said, please excuse me for saying it, but we have to be open here, this is what we're discussing. He said, shadayim, which literally doesn't mean, it's not a nice way of saying breast, put it that way. So I practiced, wow, I've got the two words, off and shadayim, off shadayim, off shadayim. I wait in line with another 30 Israelis. I get to the front of the line, and the little 9-year-old says, Ani rotze shadayim. And the whole Chadar Ochel packs up. But the truth is, without being vulgar, sexuality is something that everybody deals with from a young age. It was a silly little story. But the truth is, as a 9-year-old, I wasn't far off what I said. And we as the Jewish people are no different to anyone else. We deal with sexuality and our drives and our ta'avot just like anyone else does. So where do we turn? Either when we're in trouble, or we're confused, or we want to change in life. Where do we go? You have source sheets, they're a little bit out of order because I changed a few things a few hours ago. But I want to start, and we don't have to go through every single one of the Makorot in depth, but they're there for you, okay? I'm going to tell you the story that happened in Sanhedrin. It goes like this. Around the times of the temple, there was a great ta'ava, a great pull for idol worship. Right? The same drive, because idol worship is about serving something other than God. There was the same drive connected to it was the sexual drive. And the rabbis saw that it was actually out of control. Gilui arayot, the prohibited sexual relations, were affecting everybody. So they decided to play a little trick and capture this yetzer. I'm not calling it a yetzer hara, I'm calling it a yetzer. This drive. And whatever it is, some spiritual heebie-jeebie they did, and they captured it. And they put it in jail. Actually, a pot, as it says in there. A metal pot, and they close it up. And they go for a walk after being so happy with themselves that now they have saved the Jewish people and our ta'avot. And they go for a walk and they realize that no eggs are being laid and no milk is being produced. And the reality hits them that the sexual drive is something that is so important to the world. They realized that they actually did the wrong thing by getting rid of it, by containing it in this seer. So they took it out and they painted rouge on its eyes. I only know that because my wife is a makeup artist. They painted this makeup on its eyes to weaken its drive, its pull, and let it back out into the world. We're going to speak tonight about drives that people have. Like everything in the world, we're all the same. We all have those drives. And it's time not to be embarrassed about it. I don't expect anybody here to tell everybody, half the crowd is over there, right? Because they didn't want to be seen, and that's fine. But we need to start to create an environment of trust that we can discuss these things. Okay? If anyone has a comment, a question, an argument, go for it. I'll leave. No, I'm kidding. Go for it. Please tell me. Okay? I want this to be interactive. Okay. This is a study that was done. I know it's not in your sheets. I apologize. I have to have the power somehow.
Do you want me to turn the lights off?
Yeah, let's see if it will help.
This one we should turn off.
Yeah. Thank you.
The back one over there.
Nadia, do you want to just read that because you're the closest? The three main reasons.
The three main reasons people give for their singleness are that they haven't found the right person, 30%, aren't financially stable. Are you sure I'm not sure I want to read this. Okay. Aren't financially stable enough, 27%, and are not ready to settle down, most of us, 22%. The one number that hasn't really budged is the percentage of 64-year-olds who have never been married. In 1960 it was 8%, and in 2012 it was 7%. But the report's authors, Wendy Wang and Kim Parker, say that this might be changing. Each decade, the percentage of people of marriageable age who are single has grown. When today's young adults reach their mid-40s to mid-50s, a record high share, roughly 25%, is likely to have never been married, they write. This is not to say that the adults in their mid-40s to mid-50s who still haven't married will never marry, but our analysis suggests that the chance of getting married for the first time after the age of 54 is relatively small. I'm so pleased my mother's not here. Carry on.
Yeah. Okay, this wasn't meant to depress anybody. It's reality. It's reality. And Torah and Halakha was written in a time where this wasn't reality. Reality was that at a good age of 16 to 18, a woman was married off to a good husband. And if they came from not such a good family, we know, we've all seen Fiddler on the Roof, right? Although that was after Halach was written, but you know what I mean? So now, my question is like this. What are we doing about that? I'm not saying, what are we doing to marry all the people that aren't married? But halakha has to relate to this. Especially halakha when relating to sexuality. Does everyone agree or disagree? By a show of, do you agree?
I don't know, are you implying that because they're not marrying, they should not be without some sort of sexual life, and that's because it's unfair to them? I don't really know what you're getting at.
So I'm not implying anything. What I want to know is people's opinions.
Okay, well, the rational opinion is that if for some reason a person hasn't managed to hit it off socially and get married for whatever reason, then he shouldn't necessarily be committing an avera or be sinning just to want what God gave him in terms of sexual impulse.
Okay.
And there's two, if we're talking about sinning, well, first of all, I know of an amazing Rav who gave a heter on the Upper West Side for people who are in a relationship and are having sex outside of wedlock, for the woman to go to the mikveh. You know exactly which rabbi I'm talking about. Bless him. And the question is, you know, you can't hide the fact that both men and women, but especially the men, have got the sexual urges, and if they masturbate, then that, according to the halakha, is a sin.
Terrible sin.
So what I think you're hinting at is that as people are getting older later, things have got to change.
I'm guessing that was not the same West Side rabbi who gave the "why buy the cow if you get the milk for free" speech in his shul. This
Definitely
actually
not.
happens.
Definitely not.
He said it's clearly
Okay.
the same rabbi who gave you "buy the cow when you're getting them for free."
So, as I said,
Pass the wine, guys. Pass the wine.
a fan down
I
here.
think,
Please. Yes.
I think what you're trying to get at, and to correct me if I'm wrong, but as I always used to say to people, you have this, you put into a difficult position when nature, in other words, the way Kodesh Baruch Hu created you is that you're to be sexually active at adolescence, which can be between 12 and 16, let's say. On the one hand, oh, I'm just, you know, whatever the range.
12 and what?
It doesn't really matter, it's irrelevant.
12 and 16.
And,
I
and,
had
and
12
in your
and 16.
early teenagers.
16.
And on the other hand, halacha then says, however, this can only be in a specific contractual relationship. In other words, you're damned if you do, but you're damned if you don't at some point. And what you're saying is, at this point, our reality is such that everybody's gone way past what halacha is saying you should be doing. And so therefore, halacha needs to adapt itself, or potentially should be adapting itself to this new reality. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I want to make it very clear that I'm a very young rabbi. And everyone's you're saying, what am I saying? I'm too young and inexperienced in halakha and life to give a psak on something like this. But what I am saying is that we need to speak to our rabbis who are able to give the psak, the yay or nay, on something like this.
But this rabbi that I'm talking about, Rav Yitz Greenberg, was talking to people saying, basically, if this is what you're doing, then kach v'kach. Now, if you get, we're obviously not talking about Haredi rabbis, but like say even the more modern Orthodox, inverted commas, if they come out and they say, listen, guys, if you have to, then aren't they being more lenient? And people will say, okay, I'm going to wait. It's basically said, if this is what you're doing, and we know, we're not blind, we know that this is what happening on the Upper West Side and the other places
And
too.
everywhere else.
Tefillin dating.
And according to Yahadut, according to Torah Yahadut, one of the ways of actually getting married is biyah. And so if it is known that you are, so you're not talking about casual sex, but you're talking about people who are living together, or it's yadua b'tzibur, that people know that these two people are together, then you should go to the woman should go to the mikveh, or I believe they both should go to the mikveh, and if they're living together, and then after however long, 9 months, a year, whatever, 2 years, they decide that they don't want to get married, then there are people who will give them a get. And that
See, it becomes musubach.
it's musubach,
Yeah.
but I know of people who've done that, who then became chozrei b'tshuva, and the woman asked the man for the get, for a get.
So, the get usually involves a payment as well. You know, there's a financial commitment. Well, it comes because you've got a kasuba. Do these people who are never married have a
It's a get, it's a get.
You can get a get like that, correct?
Yeah.
You can definitely get a get without, I'm not sure about money, but you can
There's a
definitely.
status in this Vada Pnim of a single divorced person.
Meaning what?
It means they
After
were never
divorce, they're
married,
single.
but they've received a divorce because of such a situation.
So,
I'm not going to ask this anyone's 2 seconds.
okay, good. I brought two Mekorot over here. They're further on. It's if you go over the page, it's in Yoredea over here. Yoredea Kuf Pei Gimel. Okay? The halakha talks about sleeping with someone who is in nidah. Okay? I'm going to read, it's just the last here. Where is it?
I'm just trying and translate as much
Oh,
as
okay. Okay. The last three words of the second last line. It says ve'en. Okay? It's the same on these sheets, the last four words. Ve'en chiluk, there is no difference ben pnuya lenesu'ah, between a single woman and a married woman, le'inyan isur nidah, for the issue of the prohibition against sleeping with someone who is in nidah. Ki kol haba al hanidah chayav karet. Because anybody who sleeps with a lady who is in nidah is chayav karet. Now chayav karet is a very, very serious punishment. Now, I remember sitting in Kollel with a Bachor who is now the head rabbi of a certain country, who was visiting his girlfriend. And he needed me to pull this out, because although he was so religious, he was honest with me and said, do I really have to stop myself? Now for someone sitting in yeshiva and kollel, this scares the pants off them, excuse the pun, right? This I teach to people who are not married, young, and believe that they cannot control their ta'avot. Sorry?
Just translate it.
Okay? Or their urges. Okay? Actually, it's the opposite. This I teach, this I saying here, I believe relates to somebody who is, I don't want to offend, later on in life, as in they haven't been married for a long time, okay? And they're going through what we were discussing, okay? Maybe they're dating and there's a sexual urge that is there. I believe this is what they need to learn. Not to scare them, to say, don't do it, but so that they know what the spiritual ramifications are. If they do, everybody has their own right to relate to halakha how they want to relate to halakha. Including to go to the extent that if they believe they want this to be part of their life, but yet they want their sexual drive to be fulfilled, then maybe they should go to the extent of going to a rabbi or a balanit at the mikvah and say what those people said.
But guess what? You've got mikvah ladies, especially in Jerusalem,
I know.
who will not let you in and will not let a woman who is unmarried go to a mikvah, which is a busha v'chelpa, in my
How do
opinion.
they know?
They find out, they know, they ask, they whatever. This is Israel. They're chutzpah.
Okay, let me tell you a story on that.
What?
You don't have to tell them that you're single.
Don't even
If
ask.
they want-
This is what I found.
You know what, Nadia? My sister is a Balanish. My sister is a mikvah lady.
What did you say?
I've never ever been asked for any mikvah in this round.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, it's
I've
just
just
what I've
never
heard.
Okay, so we're going for an outing when we finish the shiur.
What were you going to say, Alan?
I've had discussions with my sister about this, and
Yeah.
she is so vehement about not letting single women in, and she makes sure that she knows the women. And if there's somebody she doesn't know, she will have all sorts of questions that she'll ask, and she'll try to push and find them.
It's none of her
And-
business. None of their business.
And if anything, this is when the
also part
rabbis
of
need
their
to come
training.
out.
Often it's part of their training.
Yeah. Very often, I had a story that I married a couple in Israel. She was Australian and he was Israeli. They were not religious. And a rabbi in Australia called me and said, will you marry them? and I spoke to her before about going to the mikvah. She wanted to go to the mikvah. I'm not going to say on video what the things were that were very mesubach, but very, they became issues later on. But when she turned up to the mikvah, I got a call from the mikvah lady to say, "Is this your kala?" I said, "Yes." She said, "I will not let her into the mikvah because she doesn't have a letter from the Rebbetzin that she learnt with." Now, I'm not telling you this to bash what's going on, right? But I want to tell you there are people on our side, because I hung up the phone, I picked up the phone to my Rosh Kollel, Rav Shuki Reich, and I told him the story. He said, "Give me the rabbi's name, he will not have a job tomorrow." Okay? I called, unfortunately we didn't get to that, because there was nothing wrong with this lady. There was there should have been absolutely no questions. She was a kala the night before her wedding. She didn't have a note. So what was the story? I phoned her back
What
to
about
get...
the business about not embarrassing people?
Which rabbi wouldn't have a job tomorrow? I don't
The rabbi who was in charge of the mikveh, who told the mikveh lady not to let her
it
in.
wasn't. I thought it was the mikvah lady's initiative.
It was, and then she called the rabbi when they insisted. Anyway, it's not to bash those people, but to tell you a beautiful story. I called the kala back, and I heard that she was outside. She said, "Rabbi, plans have changed." I said, "Uh-oh, are you now not going to the mikveh? I mean, that's a real danger. Tomorrow I'm going to marry people, and knowing she hasn't been to the mikveh." She said, "No, don't worry. There was a kala before me, and her mother heard the way the mikveh lady was talking to me. She came out of the mikveh and she said, 'I'm going to take you to dip in the sea.' And this kala, who is getting married the next day as well, drove to Herzliya Beach,
Beautiful.
walked her into the water, and put her in the mikveh. That's a beautiful story. There are people who are open-minded and loving and caring, and we've got a lot of work to do, but we need to get those people in power. Let's carry on with the shiur, okay? So, someone want to read the English over here, under the Yoredea, in a well-known rabbinic debate. This is the way I do shiurim, I'm sorry. I try and get people involved, I'm not here to lecture. Someone want to read? Go for it.
In a well-known rabbinic debate, Ramban and Ramban consider how serious an infraction it is to touch a woman who is a nida. According to the Ramban in Sefer HaMitzvot, whoever touches a woman in nida with affection or desire, even if the act falls short of intercourse, violates a negative Torah commandment. On the other hand, Ramban commentary states that acts such as hugging and kissing do not violate a negative commandment of the Torah, but only a rabbinic prohibition.
The reason that I brought this is what I teach to those young people who are going through the same drives as those that haven't been married yet. In other words, they're in their 30s, 40s, whatever it is. Why do I show this to them? Because it's a bit of an all or nothing generation. And they need to know, and we need to know, like anything in life, there are shlavim, there are stages. And even with sexuality, just because you got to first base doesn't mean you have to get to home run. When you're young and you have this very powerful sexual drive, you need to decide as an open and communicative young couple, what are your boundaries? Because the fact there are boundaries in life means that there are stages. Once I break this boundary, it doesn't mean I can't create another boundary. And the problem with this generation, and I'm not that far away from them, is that as soon as they break one boundary, they think that they should just keep going. I'll give you an example. I was in yeshiva, in Yeshivat Shiloh. Okay, amazing yeshiva. That's where I learned what Zionism is to me today. Okay? Anyway, I was in a room with another South African who likes South African accents. And it was Shabbat. And he walked past the light and he forgot it was Shabbat. So he turned it on. And you know what his reaction was? Ah, stuff it, I'm going to have a cigarette now.
For diets too.
Yeah, I had one piece of chocolate cake. I said, oh, okay. That's right.
Yeah.
But that's not how life works. That's not how life works. And the truth, to make us understand, because unfortunately, all mashalim to Haredim, we all go, oh, that's not us, right? But I deal with Haredim and with therapists who are dealing with Haredim, that everything is black and white, literally, right? But also to the extent that the therapists tell me, this man failed himself and he looked at pornography. The moment he looks at pornography, to him, he's already gone to the dark side. And he can see a prostitute. Now, obviously we're talking in klalim, and I'm not naming people, and we talk about dati lumi as klalim and charedim as klalim. I'm just saying that that's a mindset that they have. So if that's so uncomprehendable for us, to say, you looked at some porn, turn the porn off, it doesn't mean you could go cheat on your wife and be with a prostitute. The same thing, just because I held her hand, just because I kissed her, just because I even had, saying so, oral sex with her. There is a huge jump from that to this. Especially if you can hold by the Ramban. I got an email, I told in the last limud, I've got many emails since, it's not the only email that I got, from a lady who said to me, we have, I think it was 6 children, 4 of them have very, very great difficulties, learning difficulties, Down syndrome, epilepsy. She said, as you can imagine, my husband and my love life is FS, nothing. It's very difficult for us. She said, maybe on mikvah night, because it's a mitzvah. She said, I am desperate to try and reignite our sexual love life. But I want to ask you a few questions. I'd like to know if halachically we are allowed to bathe together. And I'd like to know about oral sex. And I looked at this email, and after 13 years of marriage, I thought to myself, do you realize what a jump it is from getting in a bath with your husband to having oral sex? Do you realize how many comfort boundaries need to be broken down? They're not in the same line, let alone the same email. One may lead to the other. And those people with healthy sexual relationships in this room may not see a major jump because we're very comfortable and happy with whoever we're with. But for someone who was so uncomfortable, going through so many issues, to say, I want to jump in the bath with him and then oral sex, it doesn't have to be that way. That's what I tell the young people. I'm finishing on Wednesday, 3-part series for a whole lot of Katamon, Australian and South African and American 21 to 35-year-olds. This is what I'm saying to them. You don't have to be sleeping together just because you're doing A to X. You don't have to do Y and Z. Are there any comments on what I'm talking?
Well, okay, there's a woman's board that I have a spy there. And there was a discussion there which actually connected the two. I'm wondering if, well, we shouldn't wonder if the same person is involved, but it occurred to me, maybe they are coming from the same place, because people there were saying, well, what's the problem with being together? Well, but you would see that place which is forbidden, and that's the same prohibition against oral sex. So I wonder if someone did actually, it had a yeshivish fetch start to it.
Maybe. Listen, I know this is live TV over here, but I've bathed with my wife, thank God, many times, right? And one of the beautiful things about such a thing is that it doesn't have to be sexual. Is that it's relaxing, it's loving, it's caring, and the truth is, it could be quite uncomfortable and dangerous to be doing those two things at once in the bath, right?
I was worried if she can like hold the breath for a minute.
I drown.
So it may be that was
snorkel, but anyway,
Very good.
more wine. Maybe there was a connection, but I didn't see. I'll send the emails on to you. Maybe you can tell me. Okay, let's move on.
My question is not so much for our community, but I'm thinking even the Haredi community, because I too, believe it or not, somehow managed to get emails similar from a Haredi woman who I have no idea who she is and everything, but she was just not taught anything.
Yeah.
The Haredi community is not taught anything, and they're kept so far apart, the boys and the girls, that when they actually get together, they don't. I've heard that a lot of them don't know what to do when they get married. They don't know what to do with the urges. A lot of the urges are then come out in yeshiva, man on man. Not there's anything wrong with that, of course, but they think it is. But I think that they need serious help. I'm talking the Haredi community that really needs you and people like you to as far as sex ed. And there was a long time ago. There was a video, and I can't remember what it was called. Do you remember what it was called?
Educating. Flew to South Africa that night or something.
Yeah, educating. Everybody, but the Haredim said, "Yalla, go out," and because our community doesn't know what to do when they get married.
So
it's a serious problem.
It's interesting. Sorry.
Sorry.
So you have YouTube for that.
Oh no,
YouTube.
this was actually before YouTube. The Joy of Sex, could it have been Joy of Sex? I can't remember.
But don't they have colour classes?
So this is
film girls have colour classes.
This is the interesting thing. I want to tell you because I do have some eyes in there and ears in there. For us, the Haredi community is one big bunch, right? It's not. There's major differences between the more misnagdish and the Hasidim. Within the Hasidim, there's lots of breakdowns.
Yeah.
The sexual world of the Haredi world is most healthy amongst some of the Hasidic sects. Okay? The other ones, Chabad aren't seen as such Haredi by the Haredim, but Chabad is definitely very open, very much more open than other Haredim. But there are other Hasidic sects that they do almost, like you say, no education before, right? In fact, they meet on the day of, so the ta'avot don't work on them, the urges don't work on them for too early before. They're with each other, and then the most amazing thing, which I think everybody should be doing, they have a madrich. From the night they have first been with their wife, every time they have the urge, they pick up the telephone and they say, "These are my urges. Do you think we should be together? How can we be together?" In other words, the education happens afterwards, so that the urges don't come into their mind before as a bocha, right, as a bachur. I'm now married, now is the time for the mitzvah, so now I'm going to do a learning in progress.
Except they do have the urges before.
Yeah. Of course they do.
When they get married at 20.
Yeah, of course. I got married at 22 and my wife at 20. Everyone has those urges, as we said, from the age of 12, right? And we all deal with them in different ways. Now, I think that there are two things here. There's what do we do with education before, And what did we do with education for people who are married or having sex and not being married, right? Now, the education before, I'm not going to talk about tonight, except for to tell you, I'm working on a program that connects education for teachers, how to teach their students about sexuality, and parents, how to teach their children about sexuality. And within the website, they will be able to see what each other are doing, so that students and kids actually see that for once their teachers and their parents are on the same page. Okay? If anyone knows an investor, please come and talk to me. All right, you can't really see this very well.
There's another issue, certainly in the day and age of YouTube and TV, and I'm not talking about Haredi community, but maybe the Chiloni community. Kids are definitely maturing earlier.
Yes.
And I think my nephew at the age of 10 said, "Hey Dad, when are we going to have the talk?" Actually, it seems that he probably knows more than my brother. Well, but kids are definitely maturing because of
They're not
the stuff
necessarily
that they're
maturing,
watching.
they're just hearing about it.
No.
They may be 10 years old, but they're not
They're aware of sexuality.
They're more aware.
The bodily
They're
changes.
aware, but
that
they're not emotionally mature enough.
Not
for-
emotionally, but
Some of them are, some of them aren't.
they have the impulses early.
Greater exposure leads to it's a particular type of education, positive or negative, it's a particular type of education, which they're getting earlier, and therefore they're more educated, which you can say brings them a certain level of maturity. Whether they know how to handle that is something else.
I would say a certain level of information
Yeah.
that they struggle with to, they may struggle or not struggle with to deal with. I read a book, and I can't remember the book's name. It was written by a non-Jewish religious Christian who talks about how to speak to your children about sexuality. And a wonderful thing that she said is like this: gone are the days that we sit down for the birds and the bees. What parents need to do is use educational opportunities. What does that mean? And it's not just with sexuality. We need to keep our ear open for when they mention something that is a trigger for us to jump in and say, now I can talk about this. Right? She gives a whole lot of examples which I don't necessarily agree with. It's good because I don't remember her name, right? But she says, for example, if your 3-year-old or 4-year-old walks in on you in the bathroom and they say, "Hey, mummy, what's that?" She says, you use the exact names for every private part of your body, because they're asking, you never know when they're going to ask again. Right? I'll give you an example that happened to us. My little daughter is not so little, she's 11 years old. And we learn with her every week. My wife and I sit down, we open up a Tanakh, and we learn with her in preparation for her bat mitzvah. We were learning Yaakov, Rachel, and Leah. And it says, Vayavo Aleah, he came upon her. And I thought to myself, this is an educational opportunity. Let's see what she says. And she picked up on it. She said, I think I know what that means. I said, okay, do you want to tell us? She says,
No.
I'll tell Ima. I said, fine, no problem. No, but why should I push myself onto her band? She says, you know what? I'll write it. So she writes down S-E-X. It goes like this. Right? I said, very good. Now, do you know what that means?
Y-E-S.
And why did I ask, do you know what that means? Because how do I know the next time she's going to bring up the topic of sex? Now's the time to talk about it. I'm not going to go into all of the details, but we got through all the details. She was grossed out by it. Or she said she was grossed out by it. And that's fine, because maybe she's not at that maturity level to process it. But if we didn't take that educational opportunity then, who knows when it's going to be? Right? Totally off topic, but very, very important. Whether it's our children or our nieces and nephews or our grandchildren, whoever it is. It's like Rav Amital, Zichrono Livracha, used to tell a story about a guy who would come to his Rosh Hashiva and ask if his cow was kosher. He used to say, the guy knew whether his cow was kosher or not. He came to the Rosh Hashiva because he wanted a connection with Rosh Hashiva. And many of us are very scared about the connection that we can have with our child. We need to open our ear to it. Not only about sexuality, but that's about a whole other shit. Okay, I wanted to do a whole thing here about what partnership actually is. How long do we have? Does that mean hurry it up?
No, 20 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to miss this. I'm going to skip this.
Carry on.
No, because it's important to get to the other stuff. But I'll give you a kitzur, a shortening like this. This is how I see marriage and partnership. However someone wants to live that out is none of my business. Okay? I do believe, as who I think I am, marriage is the best structure. I didn't tell you before, I come from a divorced family. My parents were divorced when I was 4. At 4 and a day, I was the father of the house. Right? And I truly, truly believe that, and I truly believe that I'm able to talk to people the way that I talk to people because of the experiences I had from the age of 4. But I believe like this. 2 psukim, 2 verses that are so central to marriage and partnership, however you want to live that out. One, that Hashem saw that it was not good for man to be alone, so he created him an Ezer Kenegdo, a helper opposite him. Rashi says something very simple. He says, if he's a good guy, she helps. If he's a bad guy, she's against him.
It's the 4th floor when you come in.
They must have heard about the Shiur.
People are tweeting, live tweeting.
Thank you for the PR. Good. So Rashi says, an Ezer Kenegdo, a helper against, means she's or a helper for him, or she's against him. I don't believe that that's what it is. Why? Because the Klei Yakar and the Rambam, whatever, we're not going to go into all of them, says like this. The Ramban says, and you can see it in the words, that perhaps Adam and Eve were created du partsufim, Siamese twins, back to back. And it says, God saw that it is not good for man to be alone. By being so together, he was still alone. Why? Because how do you communicate with someone that you're facing your back to? So God puts Adam to sleep, separates them, and the Ramban says, now they could face each other. And his words are so beautiful. He says, through their separation, they connected. Through their separation, through being 2 separate people, that's how they could connect. That's what partnership is about. That's what marriage is about. That we are 2 separate people who need to face each other and communicate. And what happens when we do that, both emotionally, spiritually, and sexually? Like God says, we become one flesh. Literally. And also we create a child, which is the one flesh that comes from the 2 separate people. Those are the base psukim, verses, that I always teach when talking about relationships. To understand that, yes, people may, I'm not up to convince anybody to be married. My mother got divorced, 14 years, she never got married. She got married, it didn't work. And I totally respect that, because I lived that. But God says the best way to do what this world is to find someone who you can be one with and who you can create another one with. Now, if that's so, sexuality has to be central to our existence. Because apart from being airy-fairy and saying, yes, I am one with you because we believe the same thing when we bring our children up the same, we literally have to be one. That is the connection. Okay.
Natan,
Yes.
as opposed to maybe Christians, I'm not really sure. Judaism, sexuality is often sex is for sex sake and not just to bring a baby in the world.
Yep.
Discuss.
Are you ready?
Did you say disgust or
No, not discuss.
The Igrot Moshe says like this. Can someone read that? Because I'm sick of my own voice. The Igrot Moshe, everyone know who Rav Moshe Feinstein was. He was the halachic leader of this generation. And he will answer, along with Rav Soloveitchik, will answer exactly what Nadia just spoke about. Yeah.
This is my humble opinion.
Yes, go for it.
In my humble
Do
opinion,
you mind if I get a drink while you do that? Carry on.
in my humble opinion, it appears that the primary obligation of Ona is when the husband sees that she desires him. Quotes from the Ravad. Thus we see that he explains the verse in this manner, that her Ona he should not diminish.
So let me just stop for a second. Ona is the mitzvah of making love with your wife.
Means that he must make her happy, give her pleasure when he sees that she is desirous of him. And similarly, when he is leaving on a trip, as Rabbi Yehuda says, Yevamot 62, the man must visit his wife because when she yearns for him, there certainly is a biblical obligation. But because most women are modest and their desire is not always evident, because there are many men that will not recognize their wives are desirous by the affectionate signals she shows him. The sages established fixed times assessing not only the strength of the man, but the mindset of the woman, that most of them will not desire more than this knowing the burden of the husband.
Okay, so there's a lot here, right? There's a lot here. But what Rav Moshe is bringing is the Gemara that talks about according to one's occupation, the man, according to the man's occupation, that's how much sex he should be giving to his wife. It's how much sex she can demand from him. Why? Because it's according to his koach. If he's a donkey driver, you have to expect less physicality from him than if he's a scribe or an investment, whatever. I don't want to name anybody's, I don't want to get anyone in trouble here. Right? So that's what he's bringing. But the point here is, and the psukim before that I didn't show you, is that Moshe is saying the function of sex is pru'uruvu, but do not make the mistake to think that that's all it's about. There is a separate mitzvah called Ona.
Hold on, but it's not, okay, fine. It is a function, this is the first mitzvah. But if it is found that the couple cannot have kids,
Yeah.
they don't have to get divorced.
They do, some say.
Are you asking a question or are you stating something?
I'll put the question mark
Yeah.
at the end.
Do they need to get divorced?
According to halakha, go for it.
And sometimes.
It's a whole different question.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
Positive
huge
direction.
it's a huge question, and I'm going to answer it like this. There's a midrash that says Rivka and Yitzchak could not have children for 20 years. Okay?
She was 3 when when
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And you can go and you can say, well, were they keeping Torah at that time, not Torah at that time? Let's say that there was some type of spirit of the Torah at that time. Okay? Even though it was before Har Sinai. Halachically, he could divorce her. And let alone halachically, socially in those days, he could have got on his donkey or sent her back on her camel. Right? The Midrash says, Yitzchak took Rivka up onto Har HaMoriah, where he had the life-changing experience of the Akedah, and they faced each other. And Yitzchak said, or Yitzchak prayed for Rivka, and said, God Almighty, that comes from this woman will be holy. And Rivka turned to Yitzchak and said, God Almighty, what comes from this man will be holy. My answer is like this. There's halakha and there's the spirit of halakha. In the spirit of halakha, if somebody, I'm not judging anybody, but if somebody is going through the pain of not being able to have children, then to stand up and leave that person, they have to ask themselves, where is God in their life?
In his life.
Sorry, in his life.
In his life.
To stand up and leave somebody in such pain.
Oh, sure.
Now, there are many people.
And her life as well.
Sorry.
She could do the same. There are some couples, it's just the variador that the two, for some reason, don't know.
We have friends like that it was actually an abusive relationship, and she was constantly made to feel that it was her issue. She remarried, and Baruch Hashem is blessed with children very quickly, right? So one has to ask always, what is, it's like the person who comes home and shouts at his wife because the challah is not covered and she's embarrassing the challah, right? Where's the spirit of the Torah? The spirit of the Torah is to create shalom bayit. I'm not going into specifics. If somebody got a psak from a rabbi, whatever, and some tzaddik to say you should leave, it's none of my business. But all of these things obviously always have to be on an individual level, right? But my klali, my general answer to you is, how could somebody leave somebody in so much pain? Let's read Rav Soloveitchik, because I never thought Rav Soloveitchik would say the word erotic. So someone read. Go ahead. Go for it.
Judaism did not overlook or underestimate the physical aspects of marriage. On the contrary, one sacrificial withdrawal from the simple erotic paradise of change and variety is completed. The natural element in marriage comes to fore. The two partners owe each other not only fidelity, but also full gratification of their sexual needs. Refusal or failure by one of the partners to satisfy the conjugal rights of the other is insufficient reason for divorce. Each one must observe these laws of consortium with regard to each other. The marriage must not be converted into an exclusively spiritual fellowship. Marriage without carnal enjoyment and erotic love is contrary to human nature, and it is to be dissolved.
Wow.
So now you see a difference there between Rav Moshe Feinstein, who's saying it's on the man. It's his mitzvah to make his wife happy.
And it's also contrary to what the Rambam was saying before, that according to the Rav Natan, hugging and kissing or affection is not allowed according to Rav Natan.
That's when she's in Nida. Okay, that was talking about when she's in.
The Rambam said it's okay.
Okay.
The Rambam said no.
And but that's talking about Nida. This is a time when the lady's gone to the mikvah and she's not in Nida. Rav Moshe Feinstein says, boys, man up, and it's your job. Rav Soloveitchik adds in there and he says, hold on a second. Both need to be pleased. The halachic, and obviously this is taking a paragraph, you have to be very careful not to take things out of context. But he's saying that, yes, halachically, on the ketubah the man signed that he needs to please his wife. But we're living in a generation that one can't deny the fact the man also does need to be pleased. He does have his urges as well. Now when it comes to a bet din, who's right, who's whatever, we bring the ketubah and what she says goes. Rav Soloveitchik is saying in a general avira of marriage, one needs to be open to hearing what the other one needs sexually. Now we get letters all the time, emails all the time about male urges that either they don't know what to do with or the wife doesn't know what to do with. And the problem is one word: communication. That's why God separated Adam and Eve, because he wanted them to turn to each other and talk. Why is it that we can discuss what time to pick the kids up from school and what to have for dinner? But when I have an urge for whatever it is in bed, I'm too embarrassed to tell my wife about it. Or if my wife doesn't want it that time, or she does and I don't, why should the communication stop there just because it's about sexuality? And if sexuality is so central to our being, it has to be, we have to have a place that is safe to communicate about sexuality. We have to.
But once again, I'm Haredi bashing here, but when it's a hustle to talk about it and to talk to boys. I'm not talking about B'nai Akiva Chevra who were brought up being friends with and everything. I'm talking about totally that they're not used to talking about it. So how are they going to suddenly get married and talk about this is what I want and I don't want? I don't know how they do it.
So I can take you like this.
I think they've gone much too far.
I'm going to be very harsh over here, with all respect. Okay, when Adam and Eve sinned in the Garden of Eden, God called out to Adam Ayeka, where are you? He didn't say, where's your wife? We have to answer for our own issues. And I promise you that the Dati Leumi and modern Orthodox and conservative and reform marriages have as many problems when it comes to communication as the Haredi world. We do.
Different problems.
Whatever. But we have the same problems. Not the same problem, different problem. We have the same amount of problems. And yes, we can turn every shiur to be Haredi bashing because that's easy. But what I want is people to ask themselves where they need to improve. Where am I not communicating with my wife? Have I not been open enough to hearing, like Rav Moshe says, hear what she wants, what she needs? I know many couples who the woman doesn't feel satisfied, but she's never told that to her husband. When Rav Moshe says that the many women are very tsanua about it, and they don't want to tell their husband, it's got nothing to do with religion.
Well, it does sort of. Of course, they've been taught in school that it's not proper for them to communicate with their husband explicitly about such matters.
And I know
she must hint.
And that's true about Nida put flowers on the table or not on the table, but I know many non-religious people, many non-religious women who have a problem to say, hey, not that way, that way.
Every Cosmo magazine cover, it's not about...
Yeah, top 6 ways to get your man to do what you want.
Yes.
Right?
You read that one too?
I wrote it.
Carrie Metzal, you see? Yeah.
Right, yes, in the I'll have what she's having, right? We've got this communication, it's a big issue. I'll give you another story because people like stories. I had a lady call I'm going to just tell you all of that. I had a lady call me, she tricked me because I thought she was a therapist. She left her number on the website and said, please call me. So I called her, and it ended up being a person who wanted advice. Her presenting issue was that my husband doesn't last long enough. Okay? Now, the question that one needs to always ask is, how long is long enough? Because if we're talking about anyone in comparison to pornography, nobody is lasting long enough because they cut the scenes.
Do they really?
I actually once saw a documentary. It requires...
Go on. Should we switch off the camera now or carry on?
Yes, I realize I'm on video. I'm on video. I don't know. There's a who's this guy? He also does travelogues. British.
Palin.
No.
Richard Grant. Alan Wicks.
Alan Wicker.
Let's go back.
Anyway.
In his travelogues, he visited a place where such things are produced, and apparently it's
Louis something.
Oh, Louis Theroux.
Yes, Louis Theroux. Right, Louis Theroux.
Oh, I love that man.
Well,
Can I tell
he
you one? When I
was-
saw that, I know it's documented.
Okay. Very apparently the ability to last and perform on demand is why not every man who thinks it's the dream job can qualify.
What about the little blue pill?
Okay.
It was before.
Oh,
There are a lot of tricks that apparently they do there. I've never tried out, so I don't know. There are a lot of tricks that they do there, and they're mucking around with our brains. Because everybody, let's be real, people are taking cues from what's happening there. Right? From the male side of my husband doesn't last long enough because he doesn't go for 45 minutes. Right? All the way to why isn't she screaming with absolute pain, pleasure when I'm with her? People are taking cues from this, not just young people. Right? Why did I go there? Okay. Because this woman said my husband's not lasting long enough. Now, I said, how long is he lasting? 15 minutes. I said, is it a dick? What's the issue here? She says, oh no, that's with the spray. Okay, now there are deadening sprays that are illegal to bring into Israel.
Sorry?
Deadening sprays, they stop him feeling. Desensitizing, thank you. Desensitizing sprays that are applied 10 to 15 minutes before to wreck the romance. And then he washes it off a little bit so that it doesn't go on her, because then that can cause opposite for her, which is what you want. And that's how they last, okay? Thousands and thousands and thousands of shekels and dollars are being made by this. Okay? So with the spray, he's 15 minutes. We don't know how long without. So I said, so then what's the issue? I discussed the issues with her for a long time, until she finally got very frustrated. And just like anything in therapy, or very often in therapy, the presenting problem is not what the issue is. And she said, Rabbi, I want to have an orgasm. That was the issue. Now, why am I telling you this? Because I then spoke to them as a couple, because it was enough speaking to the woman in such, open ways without her husband there. And I said to both of them, you're religious, and certain people, although I don't give psak like that, feel that oral sex is an issue. It's asur, it's prohibited. Do you give each other that type of pleasure? She says, yes, I give him a little bit, but make sure that there's no shichvat zera, make sure that he doesn't finish outside, which I'll tell you something about in a second. I let him give me a little bit. I said, hold on a second, you're complaining that you don't get an orgasm. Over 70% of women do not get an orgasm without external stimulation. Many women, when I say that, go, oh, right? And even more so, the men go, oh, thank God. I said, so why do you let him only give you a little bit? That's normal that you're not reaching a climax if he's not giving you enough. She says, I feel bad. I said, hold on a second. You feel bad? You don't want your husband to give to you, but yet you're complaining about not reaching an orgasm. Which one do you want? They had to create communication. Why do you feel bad? How can we... Have you asked your husband if he likes it or doesn't? Maybe he does like it. You'll stop feeling bad. Ask him. Okay? And it doesn't have to be in the Haredi world. It's across the world. Okay? I'm going to jump forward to a few interesting things over here. Oral sex. It's amazing how people feel comfortable after an hour. It's going to go for longer than an hour. So I love how you're looking at that. I'll explain.
Sorry, I see sushi. What's it? Sashimi, that's it. What is it?
It's called the squeal. I'll tell you like this. There is an issue with oral sex. Two issues. The first issue is that in halakha it says, like you mentioned before, that a man should not see the woman's area like that. He shouldn't see her vagina.
I just want to add, the euphemism is in the source, not mine.
Okay,
The source says that place.
that place. Yeah. Oto hamakom is the word. Right? Oto hamakom. A man should not look at Oto hamakom. There are different reasonings. Many of the reasonings are about embarrassment. Okay? Now, I'm going to tell you the words that my Rebbetzin told me as I was learning with her husband, a great, great rabbi. And she knew that we were learning this area, and she walked past the room and she said, listen, Natan. It says, don't look. Close your eyes and please your wife. Halakha doesn't say don't please your wife. But halakha is about boundaries. And like I said before, each couple and each individual need to discuss and work out where halakha is in their life. And if they want to go to that extent that I couldn't be there and not look so I can't do it, well then they need to discuss that. But if they feel that he can be there and not look, or maybe he says, you know what, that halakha doesn't apply to us, or it applies to us and I'm going to ignore it. That's up to them. The other isur, or issue that people have with oral sex, is the woman giving to the man. My understanding of halakha is like this. It all depends on your kavanah. And I've seen proper sources to this. It all depends on your kavanah, your intent. If your intent is like Onan, who is it's a long story in Tanakh, that he was forced to marry his brother's wife, and he didn't want to continue the seed of his brother.
I was widowed.
Sorry? Widow. So he didn't want to continue, he was forced to marry the widow, and he didn't want to continue his brother's line.
Pressure.
Right? So he was with the woman and he spilled his seed outside. My understanding is like this. And it also comes from a bit of a Hasidic background. If we're going to see sexuality like Rav Moshe Feinstein and Rav Soloveitchik, who are great rabbis, much greater than me, that we have to recognize the erotic urges of individuals and couples, then if every time we get into the bedroom or wherever else you want to do it, and all we're worried about is not looking at her in a certain way, or me not finishing off outside, or whether the lights are on, or whether the sheets are off, or whatever, then how are we going to make love? How are we going to connect like Adam and Eve were meant to connect? We're going to be so worried about the do's and the don'ts. We need to let it happen. And I can tell you, if you speak to therapists, one of the greatest issues that is creating premature ejaculation by religious men is that intense worry that they are going to finish. If they would just let go and let it be, they would relax and it would be less of an issue. On the other hand, we do need to be careful. And just like, I'm going to start finishing off, just like, sorry, finish off, yeah, I'm going to finish off. No pun intended, right? Just like, you know, there's anal intercourse, okay? It's new sex, by the way, if anyone wanted to know. It's new sex out there. Everybody wants to do it, apparently. Well, that's what the guys' magazines, right? The girls' magazines aren't necessarily agreeing, okay? But it's a big fad that's going on. According to halakha, sorry?
This is terrible.
Yeah.
This read.
What this doctor said.
Go on, somebody read it.
Okay, go for it.
I'm not talking about the doctor, I'm talking about what's in there.
Which one?
Yeah, can he do with his wife whatever he wishes?
Oh, yes, well, we didn't get to that, did we?
Go on, let's do it.
Okay. This is halakha. You can't read one line. He may do with his wife whatever he wishes. He may have intercourse whenever he wishes, obviously not when she's in nidah. He may kiss any part of her body that he desires. He may have vaginal, typical, or anal, atypical intercourse, or stimulate himself with other parts of her body, so long as he does not ejaculate outside her vagina. Some authorities are lenient and say that even if he ejaculate during anal intercourse is okay if it's occasional. Okay? So you don't like the first line, right?
What about her doing anything she wants? It's like he can do it at times, using her as a, I don't know what.
Yeah, some men would like to switch that around because that's their, you know.
Who doesn't want to have anal sex?
Oh, but you can't take this out of context. You can't take this because the Gemara in Nedarim says like this. I didn't bring that Gemara and it's essential. Okay? Gemara in Nedarim, Daf Kaf. I think it's Aleph or Bet, I don't remember. Okay? It says like this. I think I've got the Daf right. It says like this. A man has to have consensual sex with his wife. And it goes through, I think it's 15 moods that one may be in that brings you blessed children or not blessed children. Yeah. Right? Including having sex when you're angry, obviously non-blessed children. Having sex when you are drunk. Having sex out of impulse. Having sex when she doesn't want it in a way that she doesn't want it. We can't ever take...
What does that mean, having sex out of impulse?
As in...
Not the Shem Mitzvah, not the plural rule.
Not only plural rule, either plural rule or none. As in your mindset, a man's mindset must be that it's a mitzvah. That he's fulfilling his wife's wishes. Sorry? It's my fault that I didn't put the two together. Yes.
Okay, alright, that's okay.
Okay, good.
Just a side comment that doesn't really need any response, and we can move straight ahead afterwards. But it's just fascinating. Normally there are, you know, in the current climate, especially in Jerusalem, very strong feeling towards woman's position in Judaism, and how it's often been suppressed or deteriorated, and it's just very interesting hearing everything that you're bringing is very, very much from the male perspective, very much what man is doing to woman. The entire discussion really has been very much from his perspective, just as an interesting comment, that's all.
Because the chiyuv...
I understand the chiyuv is on the man. No, I do understand that. It's just an interesting...
For sure. I mean, that's very, very much...
What about if a woman, the wife really wants to have sex and the man, the husband doesn't? Does that ever happen? Sorry, but he has a chiyuv to have sex with her,
That's
correct?
right. Yes.
So if anything, it's not as anti-feminist.
He could find this burden.
What?
In Rav Moshe, he could find this a burden.
I don't understand.
No, the very end of Rav Moshe is that she needs to understand that he may find this burdensome.
Yeah.
So sometimes, in other words, you're saying sometimes the man doesn't want. But according to halacha, she could take him to a bet din and say he's not fulfilling his obligation.
But if he wants and she doesn't, then
it's asur for him.
so it's not so anti. It's
It's not anti. You're just hearing the word man all the time, right? And because we're in this mindset of protect women, which we obviously should do, and protect men at the same time, right? You're hearing the word man, but you're not hearing the word he's obligated to please his wife. That's what all of this is saying. So if there's no greater protection for a woman, it should be around sexuality. If you look at what the way the rest of the world is treating women when it comes to sexuality, the way even, if I may say so, young women are treating themselves, I'm teaching 16-year-old girls. And the way that they're dressing, they tell me, not me telling them, is because that's the way that they believe they will get attention. So while the rest of the world is abusing emotionally and spiritually and physically abusing women, the Torah and those who I believe are relating to it properly are protecting them. And I'm going to say like this. There's an amazing, amazing book called Binyan Habayit. It's written by a Haredi rabbi, and you would never think it with the discussions that we had now. And he says like this, talking about tzniut during sex. He says two things. Why was a ketubah created? Why was a ketubah created? To protect the woman. To protect the Jewish woman. Why? Because there is something special about a Jewish woman. She's a bat melech. She's the daughter of a king. It says like this. A woman needs to see the beauty that she has that was given to her by her Father in heaven. And he says there are two types of tzniut. There are two types of modesty. There is modesty of the bathroom, which I'll explain in a second, and modesty because something is special and beautiful. Modesty of the bathroom is, when I go to the bathroom, according to halacha, because I'm doing something that's maybe lowly in a way or animalistic in a way, I should cover myself with a towel while I'm sitting on the toilet. I'm not going to get into a halachic discussion about it, but because it's more of an animalistic thing to do, we don't forget God's there. We cover ourselves up a little bit.
So whether you're on your own or not.
Yeah.
Most people are usually.
Not always, but yes. Okay? That's one type of tzniut, which we're going to call tzniut of the bathroom. He said there's another tzniut, another modesty. And that is when I realize something is so beautiful and so special, I protect it. I protect it from negative external influences. This is a beautiful, beautiful home. I would imagine that there's an alarm system. Don't answer because you're on tape. Okay? We protect beautiful things. This rabbi says like this. That beauty that needs to be protected from external influences, from the rest of the world, from other married men or unmarried men, is something to be proud of when used for shalom bayit and for creating children. He says if a woman, not if she has an issue of she's uncomfortable or something like that, but if she uses the excuse of tzniut, and if a couple use the excuse of tzniut to stay covered up, under sheets, lights off, and they're embarrassed about their bodies, then they're denying the beauty that God has given them in their bodies. And they're treating making love like going to the toilet. And he's saying this to the Haredi world. You cover yourself from head to toe when you're out there. But when you're with your life partner, it's not tzniut of the toilet. You need to show and be comfortable and work on being comfortable with that beauty of a body that your Father in heaven has given you. Last thing, I think we're going to finish up because people are falling asleep. Two more things, okay? Number one, he says on the same note, he says God was with us in the Bet HaMikdash. Where things were separate, it was up on a mountain. And you had to go there, make an effort to be there. But he was also with us with the Mishkan that traveled in the desert, was in the center of all of our tents. You can't leave God out of your tent. When a Jew is with their life partner in a sexual relationship, God needs to be brought in there. He can't be used as an excuse not to fully interact with your urges with your life partner and your loved one. He needs to be used as an excuse to do so, to connect on the deepest level possible. I'm going to finish off and say like this. There are a whole lot of issues about pornography, obviously, which we're not going to go into. I loved that picture. Can you see the picture on the right? They've got their arms around each other. She's thinking of a heart, he's thinking of a heart upside down. Right? But the beautiful thing about pornography that Ron Gabrieli said is like this. He's an Israeli and he used to watch pornography, and he said, he's not religious, he said, I stopped because I realized what they were having to do for my pleasure. I realized the abuse that was happening there. And if you watch these documentaries, very often they say, yeah, like many pornography stars, they were abused as children, blah, 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 blah. Like it's just part of the story. And he turned around and said, got nothing to do with religion. How can I be paying somebody to do that? When you type in, please don't do it, young Asian chick, someone is taking a young Asian girl off the street and paying her to strip for you. He says, how can I sleep at night with something like that? My responsibility to the world is way more. I have to explain that, and then we'll finish off. And this really sums up what I'm trying to say. Sexuality is a great urge. Everybody needs to decide where halakha relates to them. No one can enforce anything on anyone else. But if someone can see halakha and Torah as something that is embracing our needs, embracing our desires and recognizing them, then we can do way more and reach real levels of spiritual and emotional and physical climax that they can't in pornography. We don't need that, we don't want that. Because God has given us, and even Chazal have given us, the real ways to give pleasure to each other in the most sexual, erotic ways possible. No one needs to go searching anywhere else. It's all in the Torah. I'm going to stay for questions if anyone's game enough to ask me any questions. Otherwise, I want to thank you for letting us into your home. I hope you will let me back sometime. Thank you, Nadia, for everything. There's a lot more that I'm doing over here. We have a website called BeBetterTogether.com. On it, we have therapists. We have over 70 articles. We have sex toys, which we call couples products, and they're presented without any vulgarity, without any nudity or anything. Why? Because something like sex toys has been used in the world for individual pleasure. I'm not getting from you, so I'm going to get for myself. And we believe that if you take a vibrator, a ring, or whatever it is into your bedroom or wherever you want to do it with your loved one, then you can do it far better together rather than being alone. Thank you for having me.
I was just going to be interested to know if we had any homework that we should be doing.
I'll email it to you.
I've actually got a serious question, which is
Turn on the lights over here.
you didn't bring up. I brought up, but you didn't bring up the whole gay issue.
Yes.
And as an Orthodox rabbi, how do you? I'm sure people ask you. How do you cope with that issue?
Okay.
Halachically.
Nothing.
You got another half an hour.
No, it's like,
I'll answer on regular chad if I may, although it is not an issue like any halakhic issue that involves emotion that should be answered on regular chad. But I'll say it like this. Anything like this cannot be seen with dry halakha. The Torah says, "V'chai bahem," that you must live with your mitzvot, you must live with the Torah. That means you need to relate to what is happening here and now in our generation. Not that there weren't gay couples before, right? But it is far more not prevalent, I don't know what you want to say. Prominent, okay? Let's say it like this. I called a rabbi, who I'm not going to say his name, he hasn't given me permission to say his name, but he's a Haredi, very, very highly respected rabbi. I learned with him through smicha. He said like this. He doesn't understand why people are so caught up with knowing what two men are doing in the bedroom. He said to me, before I give an aliyah to someone who is heterosexual, do I ask them if their wife goes to the mikvah? I don't. And in fact, he took it a step further, including the halacha that we learned from the Ramah, saying that if you have a dira, a building with two flats in it, and in one flat you have, one apartment, you have a heterosexual couple who is not going to the mikvah, and you have a gay couple who is not having anal sex. According to halacha, the heterosexual couple is sinning, if you want to say that, worse than the gay couple who is not having anal sex. Now you're going to turn around to me and say, but that is an urge of a gay person, a gay man. I know we're not speaking about lesbians here, but of a gay man, right? I know people, and I'm not going to say on camera who they are, but very close to me, who are gay, but do not want to have anal sex. It is not the only way that a gay couple interact, as far as I've been told. And I'm going to say another thing. If I want to have sex with my wife during Nida, because it's an urge, because it is a passion, even out of love, am I allowed to do it as a halachically sound Jew or a halachically keeping Jew? No, I'm not. And it's painful. My wife is beautiful. And dafka during Nida is very often the time that you sit down and have the most amazing interaction and communication, and you feel so connected. And even more than that, because you know you can't, you want. I can't have sex with her. I can't. I may choose to deny that part of halakha in my life, and that's my choice. But if I want to keep to what the Rabbi is saying, I can't. And the same thing with the gay couple. I've got absolutely no right to judge what they do in their bedroom, like they have no right to judge what I do in my bedroom. But if they want to keep to halakha, like I want to keep to halakha, there are certain urges that they have to stop, like I have to stop my urges. And that's the way I have very, very open conversations.
Except that your urges will be gratified, thank you, after
extra days.
And if a gay couple keeps to what you consider halakha, then theirs will never.
And that's why I would never ever in my life ask somebody what their sexual interaction was, because that's none of my business. As I've said 1,000 times, it's up to each individual and couple to decide where halakha stands in their life. And if they decide to do that, then that's like this rabbi said to me. I'm not going to knock on the heterosexual man's door and say, excuse me, did your wife go to the mikveh so I can call you up?
But those guys who say, I'm orthodox and gay, or they say, I'm dati and I'm gay, what we're saying is, you can't be both. Not halakhically so.
That's not what,
no, because not if you're I'm saying, depending if you're doing what gays, you presume they normally do, which is anal intercourse.
How do you know that?
No, I'm not saying I'm not. Those that do it, those that are having anal intercourse can't say I'm orthodox and gay. Because
what about people who call themselves orthodox but
I agree.
throw stones at people who drive in?
I'm not saying I support
or laundering money and stealing, but I'm orthodox because I've got the beard and the hair.
I agree. I'm not supporting that view. What I'm saying is, you can't say that I eat chazon and I'm orthodox, because halakhically eating pork is forbidden, and so is anal intercourse. That's all. I'm not saying I think it's a good idea.
No, I think it's more like saying someone is into gourmet food and you assume that means they put bacon on everything.
Yeah. May I remind everybody about giving tzedakah, please? Thank you.